Sorry.
Let's
see where. Okay, you're all set to go. Anton, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, my name is Anton Williams. I grew up in Waukegan, Illinois, pretty much my whole life since I was about 7 to 8 years old. I'm 29 years old now. Currently live in Columbus. Moved out here about 2.5 years ago when I was about 26. Moved out here for a supply chain analyst job that I'll kind of get into in a little bit later down the road. So, I got my associates from College of Lake County and like and like arts, but the major was business. And then I ended up going to North Park University after that, and I got a bachelor's in business administration. And now I'm in work, about to be done with my MBA later on this year in December, and then with a certificate in accounting and a certificate in operations management. So, throughout my whole career, I've actually been working full time. I actually attended school, so kind of been a challenge. So that's how my work history went. Was so back in 2013, it was a weird thing. So let me go back a little bit further. So 2008, 2009, and 2010, I was actually playing basketball for Waukegan High School, and North Park had reached out to me to kind of go to school there. But I didn't want to go there just because they weren't, they were the D3 school and they didn't give out scholarships and stuff like that. So I ended up taking like a JUCO route at this college called MATC out in Milwaukee. Things didn't work out, things backfired, and then I ended up just moving back home, working little side jobs. Like I worked at Popeyes for a second. I did that for about a year. And then I worked at a couple other tip agencies. I worked at like a company called Little Ladies Food, and it was like one of the worst jobs I ever had. So then I ended up getting fired from there. And everything was kind of just going downhill. This is probably about 2012, 2013 when all this started to happen. So in 2013, I had a conversation with my dad because he came out here for my brother's graduation. Well, came out to Waukegan for my brother's graduation. He was graduating like he was leave like eighth grade at the time. And what happened was, we had a conversation. Then like a couple of days later, ended up running to somebody that I used to work with at Little Lady's Food. And he was telling me how he left the job and how he ended up basically finding this tip agency called like Andrew Staffing. So the next day, I actually woke up and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna find this job. I'm gonna try to get up in there. So I ended up looking for Andrew Staffing, and I ended up so I'm coming down Grand Avenue, and I must have passed it. So I got all the way by like Six Flags, Great America, and Gurnee, and I just saw this other places that looked like a temp agency. It was called Randstad. So I'm like, no, let me go ahead and talk to them and see if they know where this Andrew Staffing is at, because I don't believe GPS, and I don't believe like GPS and looking up things on the internet were like that big yet as it is now. So I really didn't like have GPS or anything like that. So I went in there. I was like, hey, like I'm looking for a job, looking for this other company, other tip agency called Andrew Staffing. So they were like, hey, we got a job for you. And I was like, okay. So it ended up being this company that I actually started working at called AkzoNobel. So I ended up going there the next day, and I worked as like a packer in the warehouse. So AkzoNobel, I'm gonna go back to the company. So AkzoNobel is an aerospace company. They make paint for airplanes, and their number one customer is like Boeing. So like all like Boeing paint for the most part is like supplied by AkzoNobel. American Airlines, same thing. United, Delta, Spirit, most airlines you can name it. AkzoNobel's paint is pretty much like 80% on there. So I ended up working as like a warehouse packer as a temp for about 6 months before I got hired on. So my role there really was just, packing like gallons in these in like boxes, and kind of just being like a team player in the warehouse as far as just doing like warehouse stuff. It's really boring, really dull. But so I kind of decided. So I had a friend that I was actually playing basketball with in the summertime too at the same time, and he, was like, hey man, you're really good. Why don't you come play at COC? I kind of kept blowing them off. I was like, no, because I had owed some money at COC before. I was like, oh, $1,300, and I didn't want to really pay that at the time, because I was gonna get paid like $50 an hour. So I was like, no, man, I'm not really, But I kind of like lied to him though, and was like, okay, I'm gonna look into it. So I did look into it when August came, and I just didn't want to pay the money, and it just seemed too difficult to do. So I was like, no, I'm gonna just keep working. So I want to say probably about 2 weeks after like the deadline kind of happened, we can kind of register for class. He ended up hitting me up like, hey, I haven't seen you on campus. I haven't seen you around. I was like, hey, I didn't even really do anything as far as the school thing goes. So he was like, all right. So he ended up asking my email and my information and stuff. So I gave my email, my information and all that. And I just kept working, going to my job. And I was actually working 10-hour days at the time because the company had just implemented like a new ERP system, which was SAP. So but for like 3 months, they weren't shipping the orders out. So they ended up getting like $10 million behind. That was the reason for me actually going there, as far as attempt going there. So basically, I was working my 10 hours a day, 8 hours on Saturday, which was it was like 58 hours a week, man. It really my feet were hurting every day, really. And but I was getting paid the most I ever got paid. It wasn't even $15 an hour. I was getting paid $13 an hour, if I'm mistaken. And so I was like, I'm chilling, I'm getting this money, this and that, and kind of doing my thing on the side, playing the game at night, just just doing whatever. And I would never forget, it was a Friday night, and he hit me up. He was like, hey, could you go to the school in the morning? And I was like, yeah, why? He was like, just check your emails. So I looked back at my emails, and come to find out, all week he was kind of talking to this teacher for me to kind of see if I can get enrolled inside like a literature arts class. It was like a basic class. And she basically said, yeah, but he was talking like if it was me. But she basically said, yeah, go to like the business office or whatever and get like a pink slip. It's like a override form. I can get into the class. I was like, all right, yeah, that sounds good. So I ended up, in my head, I was just like, I didn't really know what to expect and all that. So I ended up going to the school the next morning. But I had to pay my bill off before I even did anything. And my bill was like $1,300 at the time. And I only had like maybe like 13, like 70, like saved up just from working at AkzoNobel for about 2.5 months at the time. And I ended up, like, it was crazy. Like, so I ended up paying it. I had like maybe $40 in my name for like for like 2 weeks or something like that. And so I was like, all right. So I paid it, and then I ended up getting to the class. And so for like the next like 4 months, from like September all the way to like December, I'm going to this class every Saturday. And I ended up having a conversation with the teacher at the very end of the semester. She was like, you work real hard, this and that, and I'm gonna pass you. So I'm like, all right, that was good. And just that feeling, had me feel real good. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and just I'm gonna keep rolling with this thing. So the next semester I ended up, just going in full time. And the company at the time, AkzoNobel, I was still packing boxes and everything like that. I ended up getting hired into the company kind of around the same time, in December that year, where I was actually, getting passed through with the class. And my company had a tuition reimbursement system, so I ended up taking advantage of that. And for the next 2 years, I was just packing boxes in the warehouse and just going to school full time the whole time and working full time. And a lot of things I learned within that role was, just how to like do a lot of teamwork. I learned how like the shipping department worked, how logistics work, and it was really hard, really frustrating. So then, I ended up getting my associate's degree from CLC, and after that, I ended up talking to the customer service manager because I wanted to get into an office environment, wanted to get familiar with SAP and things like that because I kind of felt going that direction. So I ended up getting a promotion going to customer service. And in customer service, what I did, so I did it for about 10 months of customer service. And what I did there was I just worked with these customers as far as just putting in direct POs to the system, communicate with supply chain to see where what the batches that my customers wanted, where they were at. I work with logistics as well to make sure that if FedEx Ground was going out at a certain time, that these orders can get out with FedEx Ground, and then possibly change shipments to air. So that was a real good experience, and I got real good with the sales team, because the sales team would kind of come with you and kind of work with you to make sure that the customer they brought in was real good. So I did that for about 10 months, and the aerospace industry was all growing at about like a 15% rate at the time. That's what our site manager told us. And he came up with a teams concept where basically this teams concept, they were actually focused on 8 different product lines in the production environment, in the production area, because we just couldn't keep up with the demand, and we couldn't add no more capital to the warehouse or to the production area as far as like machinery, and other tools to kind of help us fast forward this process. So within that came 8 different teams, but then that created 8 different jobs for these different team leads. And then there was a production scheduler role that opened up because before that, it was, all the materials were actually being handled by planners, by 3 different planners within the planning department. So I ended up getting the scheduling job. And just within that scheduling job, what I did was I did that for about two years and like 8 months. And what I did in that role was I was actually releasing like 80 process orders a week, 10 per team. The main objective was actually to kind of flip over the primers and clears. So the primers are like the main colors that go on the airplanes, and like the clear coating is like a clear liquid that goes over these colors to make sure that it doesn't chip away over time. So what I ended up doing was I ended up had to come up with a sheet, like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet type of tool, because The issue was before I even got there that I didn't know until I got into the role was that we weren't able to really flip over these clear tanks fast enough to meet up with the primers, because the primers you can make like 1,500 to 2,000 gallon batches versus the clears you only make like 800 to 1,000. I mean, yeah, 800 to 1,000 gallon batches. So if you think a lot of times I had to flip over the tank twice. And so I was running these SLP meetings, these we call them DOR meetings, but they were SLP meetings. And within the meetings, a lot of times customer service was the main driver as far as what batches they needed in process. So so basically we had other teams that were like mini batches, portable batches, tent-based batches, but those were like we had so many so many smaller tanks that those didn't really matter as much as the primers and clears did, because those weren't like the big money makers. And on top of that, we had so many of those tanks you can kind of run wherever you wanted to run. So a lot of times in these meetings, we would basically focus on these primers and clears. So a lot of times we're just getting word of mouth from the team leads, and then that's when I ended up coming with the spreadsheet. So with the spreadsheet, what I did was I ended up making a template of what materials go inside what tank, because that helped me out as far as my scheduling goes. Then secondly, I used some historical data out of SAP, because we had transactions on our process order as far as phases go. So for example, a phase would be like basically like a staging phase. So a staging phase would be like, okay, the pre-batcher has to basically pull all the raw materials for the batch maker to basically start this order, and that would be a phase. So that would be a beginning phase and an end phase. And the calculation wouldn't really come to the end phase happen. And then, for example, like a blend might take 2 or 3 days, but it still phases on that type of process. So I use all that data to kind of build almost like time slots within SAP. And I actually work with a senior batch maker as well to kind of give me actually real time too. So we kind of just work with both of those scenarios. And that ended up helping us basically driver for these meetings as far as managing out the floor tank. So a lot of times we're in these meetings now. And for example, if we end up releasing a batch and, it might take like 2 days to stage just because, it's so many raw materials and it's so big of a batch. Well, if it ended up being like 3 days that it was inside SAP and it's staging for 3 days, well, then that's what I'll add like a red block into my Excel spreadsheet. And then I'll basically hold up like red flags inside this meeting. And basically that we'll just talk about drivers as far as how can we get this batches going. And that kind of helped us get priority on what we needed to do on the floor. So then that was a real big project that really helped us out. And that really like changed the whole environment of the production process, the production area. So another thing what I had to do too was any new items coming to the business, I had to actually work with like the head chemist. So basically, a lot of times, right, when like a new product comes to a business, especially inside the production area, this usually comes from sales. The sales usually like, hey, this customer wants this is the forecast on it. How can we make it happen? And then that's when it goes to the engineering team, but really like the chemist to kind of, make sure that, that we can actually make it. And then after that, it kind of goes to the forecaster to kind of, forecast in the system. And then, customer service finally gets it. And then production planning finally gets it. And then, it just streams down line from there. So, so that was a big driver too, because a lot of times I'm having these critical formula meetings, and basically those are new batches that was going on. So I had to basically streamline that process. Another thing too I had to do was I had to actually work with QC. So QC would actually approve our materials. They would review to make sure that the color looked good to them, and then we'll send it off to Boeing, for approval, because Boeing had to approve all our colors before they even went out to anybody, even them. And so I had to work with all of that. And another issue too was that the raw materials were an issue at my job, my last company too. So in SAP at my last company, you can basically clear out reservations on raw materials that aren't hard allocated to an order. They only get hard allocated to an order after like the staging phase finishes, because that means that the batch maker, or the pre-batch actually pulled all the materials successfully and he has everything to go. So a lot of times I'm trying to work a week in advance, and what happens is that I'm trying to like release like 80 batches next week, and I'm just assuming that all the work in process, because I was able to pull out in SAP all the work in process and kind of balance out through phases, like how many was in production altogether. So basically, I'm trying to plan my batches all around that. And what happens is sometimes the pre-batch will basically come up to me like, hey, these 15 batches can't go no more because we had the raw materials, but then now I put like a dent to my plans for the following week. So then I would have to actually work with somebody else to actually balance out the raw materials and buy things like that. So that job was real, difficult, real diverse and all that. But, it was real challenging, but it was a real good experience. So I did that for about 2.5 years, all this while still going to school. So I ended up finally getting my bachelor's degree, and then at a point I was trying to get some leadership under my belt because kind of towards my undergrad at North Park, they were taking a lot of like leadership capstone type of classes, and I feel like I wanted to kind of get involved in that in the work environment. So I ended up overseeing pre-batch for about 10 months, and just within that role, it's kind of just balance that priority with the guys. I'm trying to tell you, if you haven't been in that leadership position before, it's a real learning curve, and it was a real learning curve going down there because a lot of times I'm these guys friends, I'm talking to them, we just talk like guys on the floor, and then now I got to come down there and like be like an authoritative figure, and basically you got to kind of try to balance that out. Oh, yeah. So then you got to kind of try to balance that out, and just within that, what I learned was that you can't really go down there and be like a demanding person. Really, you got to kind of like work with the team you got and kind of balance out a lot of personalities, and you got to kind of make the team feel like they're being part of it, because a lot of times you're overseeing people in the warehouse. They were basically older people or people that didn't really have any kind of like structure as far as how to handle themselves or any kind of professionalism. So that was a real big thing. And for example, like before I got down there, the KPIs for like on time and full for them as far as batches they did per day, they were at like a 15% rate because they were just pulling batches wherever they wanted to pull. They like it'll be a Monday and they might see an EG batch that's due Tuesday or Wednesday, and they'll end up just pulling that and forgetting all the hard batches on Monday. So before I left down there, we ended up at like a 95% fill rate, just because I made the team feel part of the environment. We did a lot of like 5S'ing down there. We just kind of implemented all that type of thing, all that type of stuff. And that kind of really turned the department around. So at the time, another warehouse manager, so it was big turnover as far as management goes. Another warehouse manager came into the fold, and basically he wanted somebody to oversee, well, not oversee, but he wanted somebody to actually work on the floor with the guys in the pre-batch department. I didn't want to do that. So we ended up basically working something out where the inventory control analyst at the time, he wanted to basically move up in the company, and his own way of moving up was basically doing something like that. And so I ended up taking the inventory control analyst role, and I wanted to get more savvy with SAP. That was the main reason for it. And I wanted to see how the finished goods side worked in the business in SAP. So I went to inventory control analyst. I did that for about 8 months before I came to my job I'm at right now. But just in that role, what I did, I oversaw 2 pullers on first shift. The main thing was basically doing cycle counts. So cycle counts are basically like just to verify if this amount of inventory is really on the floor or not. So like, for example, if I say, hey, ECOG2, it's supposed to be 45 in like this location called like M48. Well, they might come back to me and be like, hey, there's really only 43 in M48. Well, then that would raise an alarm for me, because now I got to go downstairs and make sure that they actually count it right. Because sometimes they won't count right. Sometimes they might miss something. They might get the batches mixed up. And then sometimes it's actually true. So what happens is that you got to be careful, because then now you got to go on the system, basically correct it. But that gives a counting alarm, because it's basically like you scrapping material, and that's basically money that you actually like accounting for. So that was a big thing. Another big thing too was like actually making sure the inventory was correct on the finished goods side. So so for example, a field ticket might be 196 gallons or cans, and what happens is sometimes over time, these batches, you add so much liquid and chemicals to it, you might got to make things right. You might get a batch that's like 225 actually, but you couldn't really amend that on the process order. So what happens is that they come over in production, in the finished good area as far as the warehouse goes, and like a ticket would say 196, but somebody would exit out and be like, it's really 225. So my job was to actually make sure that inventory was correct. So we have a correct, inventory in the system, and so it basically allocates out of SAP the cans that we actually feel like we have on hand, because we had like a spot in Kanban system more of, and it wasn't really accurate with the system. So we were trying to like kind of close that gap. And that was probably the main things I did in that inventory control role. So I ended up kind of getting bored of that job real fast, because it wasn't really as involved as I thought it was going to be, or that information as I thought it was going to be. So I ended up looking outside the company, and because my real goal was to actually get inside the planning department, because the planning department were the people that were kind of like, planning what we should make, how much we should make of these materials, versus when I was scheduling, I was more of like, the execution person. So, my favoritism going on, I couldn't really get in there. And I ain't gonna lie, it was like, it was like depressing for a while, trying to find a job, because you get denied from a lot of people. It's just real hard sometimes finding a job, finding the right fit. So I ended up getting a call one day, and I was working out a lot. I ended up getting a call one day at this company called NSG Pilkington that I'm at right now. They were like, basically, I had an interview with the recruiter. Everything sounded good. It was like all the way in Columbus, Ohio. I'm in Waukegan, Illinois. I was in my mom's house still. I was probably I was 26 at the time, and I don't know. I was just like, man, it's like a far fetched. I had been denied already. I'm like, man, this ain't gonna work out anyway. I'm like, whatever. So I was about to go in the gym, and my old boss, that was my boss that brought me here, he called me. We had a good conversation in the car. He flew me out the next week. I ended up getting the job. So I ended up moving out here in 2019 to Columbus, Ohio. And basically, I'm a supply chain analyst at NSG Pilkington. So NSG Pilkington is a automotive company, and there's an automotive windshield business. And basically, I'm a buyer for the glass of this business. So we have two sides of business. One is the OE side, what we call OEM side, which we sell directly to dealerships, Honda, Toyota, GM, for they're like new cars to be made with our glass. And then it's another side, which is like a AGR side, what we call it, but it's an aftermarket side. So we have 72 service centers around the nation for this aftermarket business, but the inventory gets fed off our two main DCs, one out here in Columbus, another one out in Phoenix. So I work on the AGR side of the business. And what I do is I have vendors all over the nation and overseas, as far as Mexico, China, and Europe. So basically my task would be like, I'll come in on Monday, I'll run a transaction SAP, pull some data, run it through a macro in Microsoft Excel, and it basically will give me my supply plan now. So basically my supply plan will show me my past due orders, my current orders, my new orders, and my future supply plan. And what I do is I kind of just release orders through SAP. And then throughout the week, I kind of talk to my vendors with my exception report that gets made with the order book. And my exception report pretty much tells me any orders I need to expedite, cancel, or push back as far as demand goes or what we need at the DC level. I kind of work with my vendors on that. They give me feedback if they can do anything of that nature. Also, what I do is I work with I work with them as far as balancing their raw material inside their facility, make sure that we have enough on order to basically for them to order at from their vendors as well for the raw materials. And I'm a master data setup person too. So to make sure that the materials are replenished, the materials requirement planning system runs correctly. I'm in charge of making sure that the proper lead time is on the materials, the proper ABC codes on the materials, the proper minimum order quantity is on the materials, and like lot size and rules. Everything that goes in the master data and makes material requirement planning run good. I'm in charge of that as well right now. So recently, I had to actually reconstruct our schedule agreements, which are like our POs. So we use schedule agreements at my job. They're like blanket POs, I want to say. And over time, when you turn items off into the business and turn items on, what happens a lot is that these schedule agreements get so big, and IT eventually come knocking on your door because it's clogging up the system for them any kind of way, and doing the same thing for us. So they had basically came to us and said, hey, y'all need to do all 72 service center schedule agreements over. So I was actually in charge of reconstructing that and making sure that runs smoothly now. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So now where I'm at right now, I'm still doing this role right now. I am on the job market though, just looking for something, that I can kind of like move up in because I'm close to getting done my MBA at the end of this year. And and now I'm talking to you guys now. So I know it's a whole lot, but yeah, that was everything.
That's excellent, Anton. Your energy is amazing.
Early too, I already know.
Let me start you off with a question, and then we'll open it up to the students.
Yep.
I said, before that accidental first job that you had, did you ever envision that you would be doing the kind of complicated work in a fast-paced environment that you're doing now?
No, I never thought I'd be here where I'm at. Well, I never thought I'd be here where I'm at right now, or doing that. But I don't know. Over time, things just started happening. Things just started coming together, and no, I never would have thought. No, never would have thought. And now though, it is crazy hearing because I've had, I believe you had a speaker on the other day that he said he never saw himself running his own business either. So it's a lot of things I'm seeing that people really don't know that they're really going to do in life, and it just happens sometimes. So
that's okay,
that's
right?
a thing. Yeah, that's absolutely it's okay. You got to just have faith, really. That's kind of what I learned over the years. I know we all go to like this, North Park University, went to the Christian school, but I think we all kind of forget or don't really value how much, faith plays in a lot of things and everything.
Excellent. All right, students, you got some questions? I got more, but I really rather have you guys ask Anton questions.
I never saw myself, honestly, I never saw myself like talking to a class before like this, because you always had speakers come in. I've been to a couple classes that had speakers come in, and I just never thought I'd even be doing this, honestly.
I love it. Erica, I know you got a question. Naomi?
I know how it go because we be quiet in our class too, so I know how it go.
Yeah, undergraduates can flatline sometimes. All right, I mean, you obviously talked about how important it was, but I guess emphasize again the importance of working and communicating effectively with others.
Yeah, so what I've learned over the years is that we take classes that basically say that everybody needs to kind of like have the same vision and be in the same direction. And I didn't really know what that meant until I got into my production salesman role, because in that meeting, a lot of times, like I said, we have a lot of different departments there as far as heads go, and everybody has their own thing that they want to do. Like QC has their own objective, customer service, the warehouse, and production all together. But a lot of times that creates disconnect within the business, and that actually clogs up a lot of more materials and makes the business worse than what people actually think it can happen. So a lot of times when we actually would go into these meetings, when you would actually get everybody on the same page, you'll be amazed at what can happen, because really that can make good results for the company and you. As far as your bonus goes, a lot of people forget that your bonus relies on the business, like how the business does. So when you start seeing your bonus, getting affected by that, kind of go on the same page can, be a real factor. And you can almost like lose your job not being on the same page just because of the business goes south. Well, then everybody's gonna be out of a job. So it's real critical on everybody being on the same page.
Excellent. Again, I'll open it up to the students, and I got one last question if you guys don't have any. But don't leave us hanging. Come on, ask a question.
It's all right. It's early in the morning. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. I understand. But go ahead, Professor. I'm ready for you. Go ahead.
All right. Well, warehouses, if you've never worked in one and you think a warehouse, you think it's like a dull job, right? You think it's like the only time you see a warehouse in a movie is when they're having a shootout because, the bad guys are smuggling stuff in through the warehouse or whatever. But really, they're anything but dull places, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You'll meet a lot of characters in the warehouse. And actually, the warehouse. So the job I'm at right now, we have a warehouse, but I'm more of like in the corporate office. And at my last job, a lot of times the offices were like attached to the warehouse and attached to the production area. So you go on the floor and you actually meet. I feel like you meet like more real people out there on the production area than you do in like a closed office environment. And at the top of that too, it's really exciting. You just talk about football. You talk about you can talk how you want to talk, especially for guys. You can just talk how you want to talk, and it's a real exciting environment. And it's definitely an experience though, because it will show you how a business really runs. It will show you how to really work, because I know a lot of people just probably just went to school right after high school, and you don't really know what work is until you actually out there in that warehouse on your feet all day and trying to make moving parts into something per se.
That's awesome. All right, let's open it up to the students again, and if they don't have anything, I know you got stuff you got to do, and we can let you go. Any last words you want to give advice to the kids?
Absolutely. So right now, right, all the experience I told you guys, I basically told a lot of different managers that I've been interviewing for, and I've been turned down like crazy, especially for jobs that I feel like are like I'm overqualified for and stuff like that. But you really just got to have devotion and perseverance through everything, and you just know that, everything happened for a reason. Everything's not going to, just be handed to you. Like, especially, just coming right out of school with no work experience, you're going to start from the bottom. I'm just sorry to say, but you're really going to start from the bottom. But you got to just have devotion. You got to just keep on pushing and just really learn a lot. Try not to like get into a role where you just pushing like monkey buttons. Because that's kind of the role I'm at right now. But luckily, I've gotten to a role, back in the past where I've actually had to do real thinking strategy type of stuff. But this role I'm doing now, I don't like it. Even though it's funny that it's so crazy to explain because this is the most money I'm making as far as my career goes. But it's the most boring job I've ever had. And I don't even feel like I'm growing, honestly. So really, you want to find somewhere where you can really grow and really take these skills somewhere. And a lot of times, just when you're taking these courses, really like take into account what this ERP system mean, what materials requirement planning mean, how the business flows from the sales, the engineering to production to take all that, like make sure you take all that in, because a lot of times when you go into a business, it actually runs exactly how you get taught in class. So you really want to pay attention to that, and you really will get stumped out there in just real life. So just be ready for life. Just be ready to, get turned down, be ready for disappointment, but you gotta have to have devotion and perseverance through everything. That's what I want to advise.
Perfect. I think that's great advice to anybody at any school, but the fact that you ended up in the kind of position you are so quickly after graduating from North Park just a few years ago is a testimony to your drive and perseverance.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. One last chance, everyone. I know you got questions. Feel free to chime in.
I got a comment.
Yeah.
So no, yeah, I just wanted to add to your what you're saying. Yeah, I think it's a good skill, not giving up, because I've been turned down in the past for some stuff, and I've come back, I've reapplied, and they like my perseverance. So like, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's very important.
Yep. No, that works. Thank you, Roberto. Vanessa, go ahead. I hear you.
I have a question. So since you're in the supply chain and everything, how does the whole supply chain problem has affected your job?
Absolutely. So the big thing is that we can't get material from our vendors right now. So that's the big thing. So what all goes into that is a lot of times, right now, for example, China, we're having issues getting containers from China right now. So that's been a big impact because all the ports have been congested. So that's holding up for us for getting our materials, especially to our customers. Secondly, too, is that prices are kind of going up everywhere. So a lot of times right now we're doing a lot of resourcing in between vendors to see who can give us the cheapest price. But a lot of times if you go to a vendor that give you a cheaper price, well, you got to make sure they can even supply you with the materials. So a lot of that has kind of been the balance in between the two. And honestly, just being like the world shortage and just like the demand has spiked up everywhere, which has basically caused in like every industry, which has caused like a big clog within the supply chain area as well. So all those factors have basically came to the supply chain right now and are really affecting the business. And on the flip side too, it's crazy because sales have went up. Like in the past, for example, right, we would probably sell like 4,000 to 5,000 windshields a month, but now we're selling like 8,000 on average, way more than we ever sell before. But that's because we just assume a lot of people are just at home now and they're able to, start getting their windows fixed per se. And because like the winter months have come in too. So like the winter helps us out in my business too, because when it gets cold, people windshields crack and stuff like that. So even though it's a bad thing, right? But it has helped our business out too. So all that has attributed to this spike in demand and this spike in, and create this bottleneck everywhere within the supply chain, coming from our customers with the containers, coming from the customers with increased prices. That has made us actually try to scramble and resource and see what we can get to our customers. So a lot of times what we do to kind of resolve this issue is that we're basically trying to like give people partials if we can, trying to give people best ETAs, but a lot of times the vendors don't even have a best ETA. So you got to just kind of a lot of times just work on the go and be very flexible.
Excellent. Next.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that question. Good question.
Come on, 2 students broke the ice. A couple others jump in. Well, if there are no more questions, I don't want to keep you any longer. Did you actually use the words monkey buttons?
Yes. Yeah, because I mean that's what we really call it. Like when you just really just coming into work and pressing the button and let the button do everything for you, and then you press another button, sits in the order off. I mean, what do you learn from that? You know what I mean? So see, like that's why I'm at right now. Where like my last company, like I told you with the production schedule, I had to use my brain a little bit more to kind of like balance out things. I had to like download more files, download work in process type of files, build things. A lot more intuitive for me. I feel like in my skills and my development. Where now, I'm just pressing a button, letting everything just run for me. You know what I mean? Like, and it's kind of just boring, real dull. But yeah, that's the word I use.
Yeah, I think you're the kind of guy that needs to be walking around the plant floor, the warehouse floor, interfacing with other departments that might not, creating those relationships to make that flawless button pushing actually work.
Absolutely. And another big thing too is to make sure that you have relationships. Keep your relationships with people. That's very big, especially bosses. Like, for example, me and Professor Gavor got a real good relationship. That's one thing in school. Another thing is I got 2 bosses that I work for. So my previous customer service boss, me and her still talk to this day. I haven't worked with her in like probably 5 years, and we still talk to this day. And my boss that brought me here, even though he left the company last year, me and him still go out for drinks every like month or so. So having those connections are really big because you never know when something's gonna come up in life. You never know. Like, for example, he might have like a VP job for me one day in the future. You just never know. So just always keep your relationships with people and try not to burn bridges with people that know can probably help you out in the future.
Awesome. Excellent advice. All right, I know you got stuff to do. You got something at 9 o'clock, so I really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll turn this into a discussion. They'll have to comment on what they learned from you. Thanks,
okay, that works. You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
All right, class.
Thank you.
All right. Let me stop the recording. This way you can